Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brent Venables, the Oklahoma Sooners, kicking off spring practice in the next couple of weeks. And this is going to be one of the more fascinating programs to monitor in spring practice going into fall camp, where there are a lot of aspects of Oklahoma that you really like. Starting with the quarterback and John Mateer. Look, if you can put the pieces around John Mateer, there's zero doubt in my mind that he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, especially with Ben Arbuckle coming over to Norman as well. You look at this Oklahoma defense, I'm going to, in a couple of minutes, make an argument why I think Oklahoma's defense gets better going into 2025. But regardless, you kind of feel like it's going to be a really solid defense like it was in 2024. Even though they were playing opposite an offense that was turning the football over, wasn't staying on the football field, that Oklahoma defense kept them in a lot of football games throughout the 2024 year. To me, with Oklahoma, you got two really big questions, and that is, what does the offensive tackle play look like in 2025, and what do the pass catchers look like? If you can answer those two questions over the next 6 to 8 months before we kick off in 2025, this team can be dangerous. But you have to answer those questions because they are glaring questions going into 2025, and if they are not satisfied, it's hard to see Oklahoma being, kind of reaching their potential in the 2025 year. Those are the positions I want to focus in on. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Oklahoma fans, most importantly, y'all get into my depth chart a little bit. Call your shot in the comments section. Who do you think starts at the tackle positions for Oklahoma? Who do you think are the leading receivers for Oklahoma? Look, I know Deion Burks, a healthy Deion Burks, wide receiver one. There's no question mark about that. Who are the other wide receivers that play a role for Oklahoma? Please let it fly in the comment section. I'm still probably conflicted with my answer. I'm going to give it my best shot over the next couple of minutes. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And I want to start with this offensive line. It's the biggest question mark going into the 2025 year, specifically at the offensive tackle spot. I look at the inside. I don't have all that much questions. You look at Fabici, probably the most consistent offensive lineman last year. Troy Everett's been solid at center. I think Eddie Pierre-Louis might be a real stud for Oklahoma going into year two of his career. The question marks come at the offensive tackle spot. The first one I want to talk about is Luke Blanco coming over from Stanford. This was, in my opinion, the most underrated transfer portal addition that Oklahoma made. And quite frankly, one of the most underrated offensive tackle prospects that we saw in the transfer portal. He has started a lot of football at Stanford the last 2 years and is still getting better. The difference between Luke Blanco and a guy like Spencer Brown. Luke Blanco has starting experience, but he's only going into year three of his college football career. You look at a guy like Spencer Brown last year. And Spencer Brown had some starting experience, but was going to be a fifth-year senior. You kind of knew what he was, and you didn't really think he was going to get much better for Oklahoma going into the 2024 year, and that's exactly what we got. A tackle that just wasn't SEC caliber. What excites me the most about Luke Blanco is this is a guy that had started a little bit as a freshman at Stanford, got better in 2024. Can he take another step in 2025? Because I think this kid can be an SEC level tackle. Probably the most fascinating player to watch for Oklahoma during spring practice, at least in my opinion. Number two is Michael Fasusi. You saw Jordan Seaton last year start for Colorado and play really, really well towards the back half of 2024. I view Michael Fasusi as a very similar kind of offensive tackle prospect. This kid's ready. Now, is he ready for the SEC? I mean, it's Big 12 SEC. It's a little bit different, that's for sure. He's a guy that I think could work his way into the starting lineup, and he's probably number two. I mean, you could really get Luke Blanco, Michael Fasusi. That could be a very good offensive tackle duo. Now, who are the other names to monitor? Logan Howland. I'm encouraged about him too, kind of similar to how we talked about Luke Blanco, where Logan Howland redshirted in 2023 as a freshman. Played the back half of the season for Oklahoma. You could tell he's still working with the physicality. I think he's a really long, good athlete that probably needs to get that physicality right going into 2025. Well, he's only going into year three. He certainly can. I mean, he was coming out of high school. He was 6'7", 300 or 285 pounds, 280 pounds. He was a guy that we knew would take a year or two to get the necessarily weight and physicality right to play offensive tackle in the SEC. Could it be year 3 where Logan Holland can be a guy? Derek Simmons, kind of that veteran floor raiser. Here's my hot take about Derek Simmons, and this is not a shot at Derek Simmons. This is just how I see it. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you should not be rooting for Derek Simmons to start. Derek Simmons reminds me very similar to a guy like Spencer Brown, where you look at him and say, okay, he's solid. I don't think he's SEC caliber. And if he's starting, that means, a guy like Michael Fasusi or a guy like Logan Holland didn't beat him out. You're probably rooting for some of the young talent on this offensive line to beat a guy like Derek Simmons out. That's just my take on Derek Simmons. I'm a much bigger fan of Luke Blanco than Derek Simmons. I could be very wrong about that. If you figure out the offensive tackle spot, I think this offensive line can get better going into 2025. The next conversation is the pass catchers, right? Who are going to be the guys that emerge in spring practice and fall camp? Deion Burks, healthy Deion Burks, wide receiver 1. The 2 names that I'm looking at is Ivan Carrion. Actually, I'm going to give you 3 names. Y'all know I love Ivan Carrion. I think he can be a monster going into year 2. Giovanni Gibson, very, very intriguing. Had over 100 targets. I believe caught 65 of them at Arkansas Pine Bluff last year. He's long. He can work vertically. The question is, can he bring that production from the FCS level to the SEC level? Not just Power 4 level, the SEC. But he's very talented. And then Jaden Gibson coming off of injury. You have some guys that I think have some big time ceilings. And can they reach that ceiling in 2025? That's probably the conversation that you're having. Isaiah Satang, I'd probably put in a very similar category. I mean, this guy, prolific track and field background coming out of high school, committed to Arkansas in an offense that was kind of a roller coaster with better quarterback play and better OC with Coach Arbuckle. Could Isaiah Satang kind of break out? There's a lot of names that you're just kind of monitoring. And right now, I think Deion Burks is the only known commodity. The last position on offense that I'd be looking at is the running back spot. You got 4 names. To me, the question is, all right, who breaks out and kind of emerges as that running back one, where I think one of the flaws with Oklahoma last year, of which there were many, was you didn't really have that running back one. You were kind of juggling it. You didn't really know who your guy was. You got 4 capable backs. Who emerges over the next couple of months going into 2025 as your real difference maker in the backfield? I personally lean to some of the younger cats and Xavier Robinson and Taylor Tatum. I thought you saw some really good things from Xavier Robinson. I wish he got a little bit more burn as a true freshman for Oklahoma. Going to the defensive side of the football, here's my argument that it gets better. You lose Danny Stutzman, and there's no replacing Danny Stutzman, but I think Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, potentially Kendall Daniels as well, by committee, I think you can make up for the loss. I don't think a particular player is going to merge and be Danny Stutzman. Danny Stutz, he's kind of a one-on-one guy. That was about as good of linebacker play as you'll see the last couple of years. But Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie slowly have gotten better as, not even slowly, pretty damn quickly, got better as football players over the last couple of years. And I believe both of them are ready to play off-ball linebacker for Oklahoma, depending on what you do with Kendall Daniels. And I personally would put him at linebacker because I think you're pretty good with the cheetah spot with Kendall Doby. We'll see how that shakes out. Here's why I think Oklahoma could potentially get better on defense. One, you were forced to play some young cats in the secondary in 2024. You could tell they were green. You could tell they were making some young mistakes. Going into 2025, that might benefit this unit. And I think they get better as a unit going into 2025. But the real storyline here is, what does the defensive line look like? Could the defensive line be better than it was in 2024? I think it can. And Jaden Jackson going into year 2. David Stone going into year 2. PJ Adebawore going into year 3. I mean, you have 2 guys in PJ Adebawore and Danny Okoye that are legitimate freak shows in terms of the traits that they possess. Danny going into year 2, PJ going into year 3. Can either of them really break out and reach their ceiling as football players? Because if you get that, they'll be the best edge rusher on this team. And our Mason Thomas consistently getting better. Marvin Jones-Drew, former 5-star. This defensive line has some big-time potential to be a dominant unit in the 2025 year, given some of that development. I'm not necessarily concerned with who's starting on the defensive line. To me, it's a more of a concern of, hey, what am I hearing about PJ Adebari? Or what am I hearing about a guy like Danny Okoye? What am I hearing about a guy like David Stone, who certainly, we knew Jaden Jackson was the more day one ready guy. David Stone's potential is kind of unmatched. What does he look like going into year two? You got some real dogs in that room that are ideally getting better as football players. Can they break out in 2025? Because if a few of them do, this Oklahoma defensive line, which was very good last year, just gets better going into 2025. You got two big question marks, and it's Brent Venables' job to kind of figure them out. And if you can figure these question marks out, I'm not picking Oklahoma to win a national championship, but this team's going to be dangerous in the 2025 season. We'll shut it down on that. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.